are live. Let's go out and say, show this thread. All right, we're live. Little up button. How about that? Cool. Okay. Yeah, sorry for the delay. I wanted to make sure to plug in this time since there were some issues last week. So let's get started. Hopefully everybody's hearing me, seeing me okay. Should see Twitter in the background. Let's go ahead and get rid of some of that stuff. Okay, so let's jump right in. The other day I had a need for this. So there is a CJSON structure or assertJSON structure in Laravel. Totally great. But I wanted to take that a step farther and say that like the structure wasn't just like these keys, it had these data types as well. The specific use case was a situation where I was pulling weather data down and I couldn't necessarily control the weather data, but I needed to make some assertions have some reliance. For example, that one of the timestamps was an integer. It was a Unix timestamp and not necessarily a formatted date. It was causing some issues. And so, knowing that that structure was configured that way, set that way, was helpful. Again, because the weather data changed and it was a service that I didn't own, but it was actually causing a bug in the application. It was something that was pretty important. So actually ran out, Googled, of course, anytime there's something that's not in the framework or I've already proven in the framework, is pretty rare to be fair because there's a lot of stuff in Laravel. But I came across this, which was great, but unfortunately it was closed. And long story short, Taylor, this was a while ago, so this may be something that now could be added. Who knows? But first, I think today what we're going to do is just bring it back to life, see how it feels, see how it works, and I can always try to PR it at some other point in time. But they basically wrote this before. I think somewhere in here they have a link to a gist. Let's find out. Somewhere there's actually some code. Yes, here we go. Ah, somewhere there's code. Let's find the code first. How about that? Oh, of course the code's actually in the pull request. That helps. Okay, so anyway, this is what we're going to try to revive and build today. So I have made, and I don't know how far I'll get on this. We'll just see. We'll just kind of play with this code that already exists. So again, hopefully everybody's seeing and hearing me okay. Let's just make sure there was no tweet craziness. All seems good. Okay. Okay, so anyways, I made this little super simple output. So basically, we can go here. It's just a Laravel 7 application, and I effectively just made some API endpoint. I return JSON, and it's just some information about me, my name, my age, my height. I didn't put my weight. I have some winter pounds on there. I just wanted to get a Boolean in here, so I just said something simple like male true. Obviously, in the real world, that should probably say gender or sex or whatever, but just for now, to get that Boolean value, I just said male true. I threw some attributes on there, hair color, eye color, stuff like that, and some silly stuff like hobbies. And what I'm really trying to do here is just kind of quickly hit all the different, all the different data types that might be in JSON. So we have Boolean, we have number, we have integer, we have a string, we have an array that's also subkeyed. So this one's going to be kind of the interesting one. That's going to be the real challenge. And then also an array with just values in it, so just a generic array. So those are kind of all the top level data types, and those are just part of the JSON spec, but also, I think yeah, here you go. Someone even said in here, like, there's other stuff that you can have. So for example, we kind of have all that. We have, the array. We have, technically speaking, a JSON object because of the key value pairs. And we have, just a simple string, int, number, and bool. So we don't have null necessarily, but I don't know why you would ever check that something's explicitly null. So I'm going to leave that out for now. And on the left here, I basically wrote a just a standard test with all the standard assertions that we have. And when I run this, we'll see everything passes. Great. And this is one way to do it, right? This totally works. It's a nice kind of generic test that just makes sure the structure is what we expect. So all good. We can even, assert the keys on all that. So this all works. And again, for the most part, this is totally fine. But it's one of those things where, for me, in this very specific case, I think there could be a little bit more. So what I'd like to do is write the test that I would want. So let's just copy this so we can keep it as a reference. And I'll just collapse it so it kind of doesn't get in the way. And what I would really like to be able to do is say something like string, integer, maybe. Here we could say, number, something along those lines. Here we could say boolean or bool. And then we can even go real low level here and basically say, this should be a string and this should be a string, right? And then this is an array. And we don't necessarily care about what the values are in here. And maybe down the road there might be a cooler way to say that. So again, bringing up that example controller just to kind of see, again, side by side one last time, a string, an integer for your age. You're not going to be, 38.3. Height, though, would be a number, or decimal might be a better way to think of that, or float in PHP. But I want these values to mimic the JSON values, the data types, a little bit more than the PHP data types. So we're gonna stick with those names for now. Boolean, again, a object that has its own key values. So this is just kind of that nested structure again here, and then hobbies as well. So is an array. Okay, so obviously if we run this, this is not going to pass, right? Failed asserting that array has the key string. So again, this is something a little interesting about JSON structure. It doesn't take key values. It really just looks at the values and assumes that those are the keys. So it's kind of an inverse transpose kind of check. So that's where this new one comes in handy. Okay, so again, let's go back and let's just copy this and turn this into like a little local test at first. So I'm just going to straight take what they have and let's just see how far it gets us. It might just be freaking perfect. So let's just steal it. And, well, we're going to borrow it. And let's change this to assert JSON typed structure. And obviously we're going to have to pass it in the response. So we'll turn this into a macro here in just a second. But for now, let's just say this arrow and assert JSON typed structure. And we'll pass in the response JSON data, right? That should be just the full JSON bit. So if we don't pass in a structure, then call assertJsonTypedStructure. I don't understand that. And we definitely don't want the decoding. So let's just drop these for now. I don't think those are necessary. And I'm going to close this sidebar so we get some more room. Okay, so we're basically, what is this doing? This is basically saying, okay, loop over each key and type, cool. If type is an array and key is star, then assert internal type, which is no longer a thing. So I think we say something like assert is array. So let's clean this up as we're going through it. It's interesting that it's saying assert, well, whatever, we'll keep going. See JSON typed structure. So this looks like it calls itself. structure star. That's interesting. Response data item. Okay. And then we'll say if it is array and the key exists in the structure, then if that is an array, then again be recursive. So assert JSON type structure and then send the lower level bits of data. And then finally we assert the internal type. Now that is going to be a bit ugly. But again, let's see where this goes. Let's see where this goes. Okay, type specified for isTypeNumber is not a valid type. Okay, so this is actually working. It's getting down to here, and it's not liking that we didn't use PHP data types here. So quickly, let's just change this to a float. Okay, failed asserting that 6 is of type float. Ooh, that's interesting. I wonder, let's test this out. I wonder if because, let's do this. Let's dump response JSON. Actually, we could see that in the browser itself. Yeah, look at that. PHP underneath actually chopped off that .0. Crazy. Okay, we don't need to dump that anymore. Just to make things work and our life easier for this quick demo, let's go and make this 6.1 so it actually comes across. Okay, great. So we get a warning, but that means everything passed. So it just says internal type is deprecated, and it's going to be removed, which we knew. So instead, we need to use the proper assertions, which is actually fine because we want this to be number anyway. So let's do this. If we get into else, let's switch the type and just start casing these up in the right way, because there's not that many of them. Let's just go down the line. There's basically string. So we would do this assert is string and take that data. And then we would just break. And then we're going to do this like 6 more times. All right, let's format that. And let's call this integer. And we'll say assert is int, I think. Int. Cool. And the next one is number. So I think we'll say is numeric. And then we've got a boolean. And we'll say is bool. Awesome. And I don't think we have anything else. So let's just do this. Let's do default this fail. We'll say unexpected type dot type. Now we should never get there, but all right, let's run this again. Unexpected type array. Okay, no problem. Let's add that as well. And we'll say array. And then assert is array. Which is kind of interesting that we get down with an array because I would have thought those checked, but whatever, no big deal. Look at that. We're passing. This works. Okay, let's review this one more time. And I'm gonna get a drink, sorry. Is anybody out there? Kind of quiet today. No chit chat or comments. Somebody throw something in the chat for me. Okay. I'm not entirely sure what like this top part does, so we'll want to kind of loop through that here in a second. But it's pretty obvious what we did down here. We basically just said, hey, look, you got to be that particular type of data that came back, which is nice. And then we get an unexpected here. So we may not want to fail so hardcore later on. Let's better understand this and tweak our data to work correctly here. So we're basically saying if the type is an array and the key is star. Now this is something assertJsonTypedStructure does. So let's kind of clean this up a little bit. Let's do something like this. What do I want to do here? I would want to have something here that was like, crap, I don't know. Let's say something like languages. Just it's what's coming to mind. So what I would expect here is that within this, there is a nested structure, and that's what this supports. And this is kind of a assert JSON thing. So we're basically saying like all the languages should have this kind of structure. And in here, this would just be like something like name is a string, and something else. I have no idea. We'll just leave it name string for now. Okay, so this should run and should fail. Undefined index languages. Awesome. Let's go change that in our actual code, and we'll say something like, just to visualize this a little better, we'll say languages, and then in here we would have nested structures of like name is PHP, of course. But the point here is that you would have multiple of these, and their structure should be that. So I also know JavaScript, if we want to call that a language. It's definitely a language, I'm just kidding. Okay, and we're back to green again. So that kind of demonstrates this wildcard usage here. You're basically saying that if you have a nested structure, duplicates of nested structures that you want to support, again, I don't know why the is array type belongs there. Oh, because I guess this side of it's an array. Of course, that makes sense. Okay, so is array type and key is star. Then we're going to assert that that side of the data is actually an array. Why would we assert that the full bit is an array? That's interesting. I don't know when you would get in here, to be honest. We'll have to come back to that. But anyways, it just loops over recursively anyway, and jumps over the structure, so it's not really a huge deal. It's just interesting that it does that. Oh, we are already looping over the structure. It's interesting that it says that the response data is there. I would have expected it not to send the whole thing. Of course, all of the response data is an array, so it seems like kind of a willy-nilly assertion there, but whatever, we'll leave it alone. So is type and array key exists. So if we're saying it's an array, so like in this case, our type would be an array, and attributes is sticking with the example, exists in that, then we would want to say we are an array, structure key is an array, and then we call recursively again. Yeah, I think this is unnecessary. This seems to always be true. I don't know when that's not true. I would have to really test that out. I heard some chat bleeps coming across. Let's see what's up. Star is all keys. Yes, you're right. Yeah, star is definitely all keys. I just think that it's kind of an unnecessary check, like, because you're always checking the full-on response data that you pass in. It's always going to be an array. So just, why would I even assert that? I get sanity checks and all, like just little sanity assertions, make sure you're on the right track, but it just seems kind of unnecessary. This part makes more sense. Like, if it's a star, then, take that thing's particular structure and, move on. I totally get that part. Anyway, well, no, I kind of don't get that part. Let's see when this is in here. let's see what's what when we're in here. Let's do structure. Or not structure, sorry. Let's do type. We know the key is going to be star. Let's do type. Okay, it gets in there with name string. But response data is always the full response. So that's kind of dumb. We're going to take that out. So we get in here with all of the response data. Why would we send all of the response data in here? I just don't understand that. I'm not getting it, peeps. Like, what is this? It's saying star. I'm quite confused. Structure should not change the first time we're through. I get that structure changes once we pass it recursively, but I'm getting a brain bend here. I hear some chats. Let's see. How assertJSON would be handled. If the top key is equal to star, it should get in that if. Yeah, but the top key is not star. See, when we get in here, let's just see what structure is. Yeah, see, we're getting in there with a lower level structure. That's what's kind of interesting. But I think we're getting in there from a different level is kind of the point. That's what's going on. Yeah, that's what's happening. We're not getting in here at first. We're getting in here later on, is really what's happening. And that's why they make that assertion with the array. That's why they do this. Yeah, you can't think of response data as, you know, what it is. You kind of have to think of it as what it is, I guess, at that time. So initially we come in here because the whole type is an array, and the key exists, array key exists on the structure. So we loop over the structure. We would get in here because of the languages, and then languages would call assert with languages and that sublevel of data, which would be this, okay? And now the key is star and the type is array. That's why we're getting in here. And then we would want to assert that that particular bit of response data is an array, because if it's not an array, then we already know it's no good. Again, not an entirely important check because it would happen down here, I suppose. Well, it wouldn't happen down here because we don't call it explicitly an array. So that's why this check is necessary. Okay, that was a lot of back and forth. Let's do one last thing. Let's see if we can turn this into a macro for the request. That way we don't have to do this little silly dance. I think it'd be a lot cooler to say something like response assert JSON type structure, right? And we don't have to pass in the actual response data. Cool. Okay, so let's try to do that. Let's take this. I think you can build a macro on response. Let's put it up in the test case. Or well, we don't need to do all that. Let's just put it here. Let's say setup. We'll call parent setup. And we'll say something like response or test response. Yeah, there it is. Macro. And the macro is going to be assert JSON typed structure. And I think these macros are a bit interesting. I think they take this. I'm not entirely sure. Let's find out. I'm not entirely sure what this macro takes. Let's go check it out. Laravel test macro. earlier and later. What does that mean? Seems like you get access to that, but I don't know if, well, I guess it's a macro on test response. So this would be the response. So I think we're good there. I think what we take here is basically, we would basically take the structure like we had before, and then data, we'll call it. And what's interesting about data is that's when, because this thing calls itself recursively, we can't always assume. So let's just do this. Let's do data is null, and we can say something like if is null data, then data is going to equal this JSON. All right. Nope. This should be the context of, I'm going to assume that this is the context of the response. And then I would effectively want to just copy what we did before. So let's do that. And all this response data becomes data. Data. And we'll say item. Ooh, that was fun. Datum. All right, cool. Yeah, let's see if this works. So we'll call response, and we'll drop that out. And we'll run this again and hope it stays green. Of course it does not. Assert is string. Oh, yeah. That's going to be an issue. I think inside of macros you have to do, yeah, we won't be able to say this. We'll have to do something kind of annoying. I think you have to do something like, you know, PHP unit assert is array. Yeah, it's a little bit ugly. I don't like that. Let's just see if it works though. Or wait, no, that is a this. So much happening. All right, let's try that. There we go. Cool. Okay, so this works. Two things I don't like about this. No pun intended. I don't like this part for two reasons. One, this feels a little hackish. Now, I don't know why anybody would ever pass data in. Obviously, we need to pass it in. The other way we could do this is we could actually do an anonymous closure inside of here that does this whole block. That's pretty meta, but that would get rid of the data bit there, and we kind of just call it with itself. And because of this nested closure, we have to do this kind of assert dance inside here. So I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that, but it works. I think this is a good first start. I don't think this macro, I don't know, we'll take a poll. Tell me what you think in the chat. How much do you care that this is on the response, similar to other things, or it's just a this? And then you have to pass the structure. Yeah, I could, part of me thinks like this in a way is more universal because you're really just checking for some kind of typed array structure then in a way. You're really just saying something more like assert array structure at that point. It doesn't matter that it's JSON. That could be more universal, to be honest. But I like the focus of this original intention, and you know, kind of going from there. So, and maybe that's how I get around some of this other stuff, is that I actually just have this method call the assert JSON, or sorry, assert array. So I could actually make both. So I could just say something like this, assert array, structure, make one of these generically as an assertion, and then I would pass it the structure and this JSON data initially, right, underneath, and then just return this. And this macro could be super, super tiny then. And the real value is actually this, which could potentially be PR'd into the framework, and then this little macro could just be something people add. So all different ideas there, actually pretty cool. I could see both being valuable. So anyway, let me know what you think real quick, but I think we'll probably cut it off there. I'll kind of determine the best way through, and then I'm going to throw this up on the Laravel additional assertions, which is right here. So I'm just going to add it here with some additional stuff. There's already some assertions in here that are helpful. They're all kind of top layer assertions on the test, Laravel's test case. But maybe we'll add a new one now called test response assertions or something. And I'll add in that assert JSON type structure and definitely give some due credit here because this is pretty cool. I mean, what they had basically worked. Yeah, nice little test stub there. That's cool. Yeah, just kind of bring this into the fold. And again, if people use it or whatever, maybe there'll be a chance to revisit opening this PR. So, okay, well, like I said, I'm going to spend the rest of the time just going ahead and making a PR into that. So you should see it here in the next little bit. I'll probably wait to tag it so it'll be on dev master, maybe for the next day or two while I kind of tinker with it and maybe go back to that other project and use it and make sure it kind of works the way I want. So yeah, I definitely think, there's an opportunity. It sounds like the people that are chiming in agree that assert, array structure could have some value. And honestly, if it were me, there's really no reason, in my opinion, that this original, I don't know why this couldn't support what we have. Like in my mind, this makes total sense for assertJsonTypedStructure to do this. And it would be very easy to say, look, if we have key value pairs, then the keys are the keys and the values are the expected types. And this would kind of be the best of both worlds. Like, is it a lot more like objects and so forth? Yeah, but there's really no reason that this assertJsonTypedStructure couldn't allow for both of these patterns, right? And be pretty flexible in that way. And to that point, the other nice thing would be, there'd be a nice way to be able to say optional here sometimes. Like, what if sometimes the response doesn't have languages? Like, when it does, I want to assert on languages, but when it doesn't, I want to kind of allow it. So maybe there's some kind of thing here, like you just say something like strict is false or something like that. I don't know. So we'll see how people use it before I kind of go down the road of pushing this into Laravel. So, but yes, I do think under the covers, I'm probably going to do both. I'm going to make the test macro that really just calls the assert array structure underneath. I think that's probably the best way through. So appreciate the feedback on that one. Okay, cool. Last questions. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we landed on that. I'll probably have the array structure be something else that I add. Am I streaming with Matt tomorrow? I think so on Lambo. He invited me to something, so we'll see if that happens. I don't know how far he got last week, so I don't know if it'll be tomorrow, but it will be at some point in time. So yeah, this was kind of the live stream for me for the week. But yes, maybe I will be joining Matt tomorrow. So if so, I'll see y'all then. And if not, I'll see y'all on Twitter. So thanks, and keep an eye out for that PR.